Welcome once again, everyone. We will see a historic game today. The Youth versus Veterans tournament held at Cannes 1989 was a historic one for Vishwanathan Anand. In one of the matches, he was pitted against Mikhail Tal. Mikhail Tal was Anand's childhood hero. Let's see how Anand fared in this game against his celebrated opponent. Anand had black pieces and the game started as c4, c5, nf3, nc6, nc3, and d4. So the game started as English opening, and Anand already came up with a provocative nd4. Moving one piece twice right at the opening is certainly provocative. The regular continuation would have been in this situation after nc3. The game generally continues as e5, e3, nf6, bishop e2, d5, d4, e into d4, e into d4, bishop e7, etc. Okay, let's go back to the main game. After nc3, Anand played nd4. The game continued e3, knight into f3, queen into f3, g6, b3. Both sides are fianchettoing their bishops, aiming the strategic a1 h8 diagonal. Black plays bishop g7, white plays bishop b2, d6, g3, rook b8. Black is aiming at queenside counterplay with a6 and b5. Also, rook b8 removes the black rook from any possible discoveries from the white bishop fianchetting at g2. The game continued, bishop g2, knight went to h6, a little unnatural position for black knight compared to the f6 square, but this maintains the diagonal open for his bishop. The game continued, queen d1. This allows white queen maneuverability to better squares in case black decides to go for bishop g4. Black played castle, white castled, black played bishop to d7 to reinforce the b5 advance, white played a4. This move aims to foil black's plans of b5 advance, but it creates holes in white's position. And b5 is not really a big threat. Rook c1 or queen c2 were better continuations here. Anyways, the game continued, bishop c6 with black neutralizing white's bishop at g2. White played d4, bishops got exchanged, and now if you look at the position, the game looks nearly equal for both sides, and in this position, black played rook c8, which is quite unclear. I really do not know why Anand played rook c8. The c file is inactive and will be inactive for a long time with b3 and c4 pawn structure blocking all lines here. Anyways, the game continued with white responding with queen d3. This is actually a weak reply by Tal here. This move removes the protection to the weak b3 pawn. D into c5 is accurate continuation here. Let's check this line. Instead of queen d3, if white plays d into c5, the game can continue as d into c5, d into c5, queen c2, e6, which prevents nd5, knight goes to e4, bishops get exchanged, f5, rook f d1, and white is in good shape. But in the main game, Tal played queen d3. The game continued as c into d4, e into d4, knight comes to f5, d5, queen goes to b6, attacking the b3 pawn. Knight goes to d1. Idea is to defend b3 as well as get rid of the bishop at g7. So the bishops get exchanged, bishop into b2, knight into b2. The position is now slightly tilted, favoring black. Knight at f5 is well placed, guarding the center. There are gaping holes in white's queenside pawn structure. Dark squares are especially weak for white. The game continued with e5. Now this is an excellent move by Anand. Here white will have to take the en passant d into e6. It's virtually forced. If it is not played, then black will have a comfortable outpost at d4 and will cripple white's position. The black knight here can go on to the d4 and it will be a completely locked position for white. Also, black can plan e4, e3 later on. Okay, so Tal played d into e6. The game continued as f into e6, rook a d1, doubling up the rook and the queen, rook f6. Black is trying to take full advantage of the semi-open f file here. The black queen is already eyeing on f2 pawn. Black will now try to double up rooks on the f file. Okay, so white plays rd2 which supports f2, and here comes e5. Now this move is a vicious one. The knight is threatening to come to d4. This will win the pawn at b3. But more dangerous is the threat of queen c6 check after knight coming to d4. Hence, it is now imperative that white maintains his queen on the d3 square. Anyways, the game continued as queen d5 check, king g7, queen b5, hoping for an exchange. Black declines the exchange, queen c7. White plays c5, and here comes queen into c5. Remember, you cannot play d into c5 here for a simple reason that r can come to d7. For example, d into c5, rook d7 check, and it's game over for black. Okay, and hence to c5, queen into c5 is the only move. Queen into b7 check, rook goes to c7, queen comes to d5, again offering an exchange. Black rejects the exchange by playing queen b4. Remember, the exchange would be bad for black. If to queen d5, black plays queen into d5 check, it will lead to rook into d5, rook c2, knight c4, and black would have lost all its advantage with the position now being equal. Okay, so to queen d5, black played queen b4, did not accept the exchange. The game went on with white playing rook f d1, lining up all the pieces, all the major pieces in the d file. Black responded with rook c5. Okay, queen went to a8. Now remember, with rook c5, it looks plausible that white can play knight at d3, forking the rook and the queen. Okay, but this move will be a blunder. Okay, so let's see. If you play knight d3, which appears as forking the queen and the rook, the following thing happens. Black can play knight e3 check, f into e3, queen into d2 check, rook into d2, rook into d5, with white losing an exchange here. Okay, and hence nd3 is a blunder. So to rook c5, white played queen a8. Black captured the b3 pawn. Now white played nd3. Here queen a7 can also be played by white instead of knight d3, but that's losing. So if you play queen a7 check instead of nd3, rook comes to f7, queen a6, knight d4, queen a8, rook c2, and this loses material for white. Because if r into c2, then queen into c2, and it's all over for white. And hence, white played knight d3 to queen into b3. White played knight d3 to queen into b3 rather than capturing on a7. Okay, so queen into b3 was replied by knight d3. Black played rook c2. Now over here, ra5 instead of rook c2 was better. ra5 ensures that black's a7 pawn is maintained. Black also gets da4 pawn, and this move also threatens nd4. But anyways, Anand played rook c2. The game continued as queen e4. Now this is the best continuation here. Again, queen into a7 does not accomplish anything for black. Let's see if instead of queen e4, White plays queen into a7, what happens? Alright, if white plays queen into a7 check, it will lead to rf7, queen a6, rook into d2, rook into d2, queen d5 check, king goes to g1, rook c7, queen b6 attacking the rook, rook comes to c3, threatening to win piece here, queen goes to b1 protecting the piece, rook b3 attacking the queen, queen goes to d1, knight d4. Now the threat is an f3 check, so knight has to come to e1, rook goes to b4, h4, queen b7, a5, queen b5, queen g4, rook b1, rook d1 protecting the knight, knight e2 check, and now white must give up the queen for black's rook and knight here, else it's all lost for white. So even that continuation can happen. If you play queen into e2, it will lead to queen into e2, rook into b1. So white has a minor piece and a rook versus black's queen, but with the passed d pawn, uh, black's queen is stronger than white's forces, and hence white did not go for this continuation. Instead, white played queen e4. So to rook c2, white played queen e4. Alright, this was followed by rook c4 attacking the queen, queen went to d5 pinning the rook, queen c3 unpinning itself. Now, if you look at this position, black has an extra pawn and his knight is extremely powerful compared to white's passive knight. White continued, rb2. Now, white is trying to create some offensive possibilities. Black ignores this offensive possibility and plays rook d4, which threatens to win material here. White plays rook b7 check, black king goes to h6. Okay, now remember, white cannot play queen g8 here because of queen c6 check from black, and black will win, and hence to king h6, white played queen b5. Now let's take a pause here. This is a critical position of this game. Can you find out what was black's next move? Pause the video here, take 10 seconds. Ready? Anand played knight e3 check. Did you find this move? White cannot play f into e3, and hence he played king g1. F into e3 would lead to mate in 7 moves. You want to see this mate? Knight e3 check. If you play f into e3, it will lead to queen c2 check, king g1, queen into d1 check, knight e1, queen into e1 check, king g2, queen f2 check, king h3, rook h4, king into h4, g into h4 also doesn't work. G into h4 will lead to queen f3 checkmate. So king h3, rook h4 check, king into h4, queen into h2 check, king g4, and queen h5 checkmate. Okay, and that's why to ne3 check, white was forced to play king g1. Black played queen c2. Over here, in fact, r into f2 is also playable by black. It also leads to a win for black. All right, let's see. To king g1, if you play r into f2, it leads to some interesting continuation. White has to reply king into f2. This is followed by knight into d1 check. King goes to g1. Rook into d3. Rook into h7 check. King g5. Rook f7. Queen d4 check. King goes to h1. Queen e4 check. King goes to g1. Knight e3. h4 check. King g4, and now white cannot prevent checkmate. So let's get back to our main game. In the main game, to king g1, r into f2 was not played. Anand played queen c2. The game continued rook f1, and here comes rook into d3. At this point, chess genius Mikhail Tal resigned. The game was no more playable. For example, the game might have continued as queen d7, threatening something here with queen into h7 check and maybe h4 check and all those possibilities. But there is no time, you see, because black plays queen into f2 check, rook into f2, rook d1 check, rook f1, rook into f1, checkmate. It was a huge moment for Anand. Anand had learned chess in a school named Tal Chess Centre. Mikhail Tal was his childhood celebrity, and now he had won against Tal himself. Hope you enjoyed this fantastic game. In the next video, we will analyze a game where Anand faced another chess legend, Boris Spassky. Till then, signing off. Goodbye.